All right, we're back. This is Black Thought. I'm your host, Dr. Hutchinson. We have with us Mr. Gee Joyner, who is a professor of English at LeMoyne Owen College, good brother, and we're talking about this. He Talk White, and it is the scholarly and artistic writings of a writer. That's what we're talking about. And we're getting ready to go into the book now, and the book is written in 3 sections. So let's cover the first section. And really, the first section, if I'm not mistaken, is related to your master's thesis.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's called White Man's Fame, Black Man's Shame. The American Textual Canon's Negative Depiction of African Americans Within Mass Media. Let me let you open that up. Talk to us about what that's about.
Man, it's a big plate. It's really trying to, it's really just a generic kind of overview of how blacks, why are we presented in this light. So what I tried to do, I was a lit major, so what I tried to do was say, well, where did this all come from? Where do these stereotypes exist? First of all, there's truth to some stereotypes, and then some of them are just flat out lies, right? So where did they start? And the first form of media is what? Books. Before there was television, before the 50s, when folks had television, when television started to become in the homes, people were reading books. Reading was the form of entertainment, right? And
I'm old enough to remember when you just had black and white TVs, and when the color TV came into vogue, and folk would say, "Ooh, that's nice,"
and that was a status symbol too.
That's right.
But I was taking it even farther back. I'm going back to 19th century. Like, what were they doing in the 1800s, right? And so you have to look at, writings is what caused stereotypes to exist. And so blacks have been castigated and demonized, for lack of better terms, from the get-go. So I start off with dealing with, and I only deal with particular, it was too much for a master's thesis, right?
True.
Now, a dissertation, it can be, for that, but. And even for that, it can be a catalog of stuff. But I said, well, let me deal with one of our greatest writers. Like, let me see, where does this come from? So I have pieces in there from where Benjamin Franklin even says that blacks are inferior to whites, and they do need to go back to their homes. This is Ben Franklin. He owned our money, right? And he's lauded as this genius and this great politician and this great inventor and everything. And so I said, wow, these heroes in America. Mark Twain. So I deal with Mark Twain's Pudd'nhead Wilson. I said, let me start with lit. I'm a lit guy, so I got to start with that. And so he has a story called Pudd'nhead Wilson, a novella. And Pudd'nhead Wilson is basically about babies being switched at birth. One's black and one's white, but the one that's black is mixed because the slave woman had sex with a passerby white man. And so she switches her baby because he can pass. It also deals with passing. So since her baby can pass, she says, I don't want my baby growing up in this desolation of being black in America, particularly at that time. So it's set in slavery in the South, of course. And so she switches her children, and her child, the black one, who was raised by master's children, he grows up to be very cutthroat. He plays with Tom, who is the actual white child, but she's raising it like it's her own. Tom's upstanding, and he's smart, and he's good to people, but the black child that's switched at birth, even though he's been switched and grown up, raised with the master now, he still he cheats, he steals, he gambles, he's an alcoholic, he gets sent away to college, flunks out, gambles up a huge debt, so his dad has to bring him back home. Even when he was a kid, he'd play with the white child that was raised by the black slave woman, and he'd beat it up, and the white kid would just let him get beat up, because he couldn't do anything because he knew he was a slave. And so it's like, wow, it's nature versus nurture. That's what Twain is dealing with. And Twain is considered one of the greatest writers of all time, definitely one of the greatest American satirist, in my opinion, particularly for that time. And even now, and a bright man, and he still has done this nature versus nurture, which says basically it's about nature. Black people are innately bad people because he was taken out of slavery and raised in the big house with the best food, with the best clothes. And he still is acting like a nigga, so to speak. So I deal with that. And I said, I got to deal with that because this is people that are lauded. When you're an English major at a white university, those type of people are on your canonical list.
And
Twain is
and
great.
That's powerful because really, I would say that the piece should have leaned toward nurture, because really there was something that
Could've been-
slave woman was given that he didn't get.
Yeah, and something that the slave master was giving that shouldn't have been given out.
Exactly.
But he doesn't deal with the rearing. When you look at the rearing from what's happening in the house, the kid is getting treated well. They didn't talk about how he's, subtextually could read what was going on in that house behind closed doors. But at the same time, we have to say, subtextually speaking, well, he is the child of a slave master. How should you be? Is that person going to turn out good? Right? Though the master, if a master can be good, he was a good master. I mean, he treated the slaves kind. He fed them. He gave them some money sometimes in the book. But at the end, the kid
that whole
still,
phrase, he was a good master. Just that's an oxymoron if there ever was
if
one.
There ever
but I
was
get
one.
your
Yeah,
point.
yeah. And so so they do. He's depicted as being a good person. He's just a product of his time. So I deal with that. And I'm trying to deal with, like, what is this about? And because the book doesn't go into detail about what's going on in the home, except that this guy was a good man for the most part, that it's Twain is saying something about racism. And I don't want to give away because you guys should read Pudd'nhead Wilson, because eventually the black kid eventually commits murder and he's caught fingerprinting. And actually, it's a forensic tale, because this is the first time anybody had introduced fingerprinting. Pudd'nhead Wilson, the title of the story. Pudd'nhead Wilson was always made fun of because he was going around trying to take people's fingerprints before there was any forensic science. And they thought he was a fool, but this fingerprinting is what led to the murder. And the black kid that's raised white, goes to jail for murder. And that's even more dastardly, right? He eventually leads to murder. So maybe blacks are innately murderous and violent and cheats and gambling. It doesn't matter how you're raised and reared. You can have all the best things. Okay, so then we leave from there, and I deal with my favorite, the reason why I write fiction really now, one of the major reasons, Nella Larson's piece, Passing, and I deal with that. And it's about two women who are best friends, and both of them are fair-skinned and can actually pass for white. One chooses to live a black life, one chooses to live a white life. And the one that chooses to live a white life, she always has her foot in the black world too, but her husband doesn't know it, okay? And when her friend, the black woman, comes and hangs out with her, she passes for white, so the husband won't think that she's fooling with them good old Negroes. And at the end of that story, the woman dies because the husband finds out that she's black, and he didn't want his kids to, he was scared his kids were going to come out with Negro features. And so she's either pushed off of a balcony at a party or she jumps. And at the end of the story, it says death by, gosh, what does it say? Basically, death by misfortune or mischance or something, as if there's a misfortune to be black, right? So, and this is a black woman writer, so we go from Mark Twain, a white man, to a black woman writer. Nella Larson was black, African, and Caribbean, and Danish, right? She lives her life as black, and so it's a black writer having the same thing, like, what is it about being black, right, that people don't want to be? And we know that story, Passing, is dealing with upward mobility and social mobility, that it pays to pass, particularly in those times, 1929 when it was written. And then we move on to my greatest portion of that I love, is how cinematic representations and media, television, the visual, the aesthetics of black, from all the, the boom of black situation comedies in the 70s, the Jeffersons, Good Times, Sanford and Son, right? Julia in the late 60s, early 70s. I Spy with Bill Cosby. Well, it's not a black sitcom, but he's a black character in that. And we deal with how blacks are portrayed, whether it's females or even the males. Oftentimes the males aren't as educated, even if they're successful, like George Jefferson. He was successful, but he seemed to be kind of foolish. Yeah. And Wheezy had all the sense, but gosh, this is a black man that owns, at that time, seven cleaners in New York.
Buffoonish. Yeah,
he was quite foolish, and he kissed a lot of butt, Mr. Whittendale, right? But he was quick to call somebody a honky or act like he was really down for the blackness. But he was living a duplicitous life, though. And so we deal with these different representations. And even then in the 80s, of course, with the Cosby Show, Family Matters, we still see funny situations in black homes. Most people want to critique Cosby for, well, it's unrealistic for a black person to have a mother and father who are a lawyer and a doctor, and they live in a nice brownstone in New York, and they got, $25,000 paintings on the, and they're going to school like it's a great life. And we know there's been wealthy blacks since the antebellum days, but it's still the representations of black gender. The woman always seems to really be the head of the household, even when the man, and I don't subscribe to or prescribe to gender roles construct, so to speak. But it would be good if the black man had maybe a leadership role in his home. And then people that are listening to this, I'm sure people can say, well, Joyner doesn't know what he's talking about, because that's actually the recipe for all situation comedies. The husband is always kind of a buffoon, a bumbling idiot. White ones too, but I can't be concerned about that. But we don't respect white people. We don't look at white men like that outside of that media like we do black ones.
Let's say it this way: there's always a counterbalance when you look at the white side of the equation.
Yeah. Because because of the numbers. You're exactly right.
And you have other things that can counteract that. So you always you don't have a counterbalance with us. And one of the things that we talked about off air that we need to just surface here, when we were looking at comedy, when we were looking at Bill Cosby, and we talked about the critique, and we don't have enough time to really get into it, so to speak. We asked ourselves the question, and you raised it, and I want to raise it now. You have one person, Bill Cosby, who had some militants off the scene, behind the scenes. You have Dick Gregory, who had militants in front of the scene. And that probably curtailed some of his forward momentum in the craft, so to speak, and in popularity, because he was up front with his blackness. And so you have that tension working. And then, if you turn it around, I'm adding to this piece, you have willful buffoonery on the part of some. Which factors into this whole media piece.
Bamboozled. I deal with that in the piece. And people, and I love Spike Lee's works. And lately, you can like, come on, Spike. But Bamboozled, it didn't get a lot of play. I remember my father, he and I we went and saw it twice together. I was just, I really loved it, and it came right on time, because I was trying to figure out what else to do with my thesis. And it came right on time. But he deals with that. Unfortunately, it's only it's 303 million, roughly 301, 302, 303 million people in the United States. You got 30 plus African Americans, 30 plus million Latinos. Unfortunately for us, it looks bad when we will willfully buffoon, like you say, or willfully be a coon for money. Most people do anything for money when offered. But once again, you got 60 plus million that are colored. And let's throw in another 15, 10 for Asians, because they maybe even less in the United States. And then the rest are considered white for the most part. So you got almost 220, 40 million non-black, non-colored people. So it doesn't look as bad when they're quote-unquote doing things for money, because the numbers support them. It hurts because our population is so small. Bamboozled does that. You're doing, and the media, of course, I'm sure you've seen Bamboozled, and you know that white people run entertainment. Oftentimes Jewish people run entertainment. Just so happen. You got to go through them first. Are they being racist? Or are they just trying to say this sells? Can you get mad when this is what blacks want to watch? Martin acting a fool on Martin, being stereotypically black in the inner city. Or, because hell, that's what they're doing, so let's keep making this. Or they can say, no, this is too derogatory. Let's make something else, because we're going to be entertaining the United States anyway. So it doesn't have to be that. But that's part of what I deal with Bamboozled, because it's a great satirical piece on how blacks do that.
Well, let's press that a little bit more. It raises the point, one, that we need to have more media outlets. And this is one.
And we need to own our own.
That's right.
Yeah,
and this
like
is
this
one. And two, it raises the point, what will we support? Now, we cry about what we don't see, but the question is, and yes, some people will say this is blaming the victim, but see, you spend your dollar on what you want. So what will you support? Will you support the Casey, I think her name is Simmons of the world? Will you support the people that are doing some serious art? Or will you support the buffoonery? That's the question that's before us, because part of this is our fault. We support it.
Well, like you had a guest before. I remember when I was in college, about a sophomore, I was working at a call center, and every black woman in there had an Eric Jerome Dickey book, and they had Milk in My Coffee. And I always wanted to write, but I just didn't know how it was gonna happen. I'm like, they ain't gonna see me in Memphis and what to do, blah blah blah. And so of course he's from Memphis, went to Harvard like my mother, went to University of Memphis with my older sister. And I remember reading his book, and no offense to him, I wasn't impressed. It's like, I got stories like that. I got stories just as good or better than this. And this is what y'all are buying. A lot of things were stock. Now I know I've heard he's gone to different he's writing differently than he was when it was pure those relationship
novels
earlier, like with Milk and My Coffee and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember we don't seem to want that. And I'm gonna be honest with you. A friend of mine told me, "Man, you should just write." Because I got a short story in Kim, the story John. That particular story is kind of like that ooh girl fiction. Now the other two stories with the Black GI Got Tale about Vietnam, black soldier going to Vietnam and changing as a person, and Piper's Gap about role reversals. What if blacks were the dominant and whites were the minority? How would blacks treat them? Nobody. Some people like that, real lit heads like that, but most people like that sexual. Dramatic type of stuff, and so it's good to have a balance. Now, I'm not saying we always have to be stuffy and have a book and be so pious. I mean, everybody likes to be entertained and have fun, but you don't want to be inundated with foolishness all the time, particularly when it's stereotypical. You can still make people entertain people without being stereotypical.
I agree with
but
that.
You're right, it's up to the dollar. Now, music, for instance, hip hop in general, down south. I was looking at the BET Awards. Everybody up there who's very successful is selling dope. Or talking about what they'll kill somebody, they'll cutthroat somebody out to get this money, and that's what sells. But you don't want to hear the positive rap for the most part. And the only person that's having that good balance of that is Kendrick Lamar, and he just has such good skills. But we don't want to hear your Lupe Fiasco. We don't want to hear Mos Def's, right? We don't want to hear Common when he was bigger in the rap game before he left for acting. But you don't think that's entertaining. There's ways to be entertaining and have a message behind it too.
But you want to know what's interesting about that now that you brought that up? You want to know the most popular point of the BET Hip Hop Awards is the Cypher.
Yeah,
the Cypher is almost as old as the pyramids.
Yeah.
When you get in a circle
and rap,
you have that basic beat and you flow.
Go from it. And I'm gonna say BET Cypher really isn't a real Cypher because it's recorded.
Well, yeah, we know
they practice and stuff like the real Cypher. You come, this rock and roll. We used to have ciphers in high school out of nowhere. Somebody at the table on that, and then we start bumping. And that's the Cypher.
And that basic hip hop beat, boom, boom, ta, boom, boom. That's like
rap.
The clave. That's just basic beat, and you go for yours.
Yeah.
But that's the most popular. So that tells you that if those who are over the commerciality of things would just think for a second, they could probably sell more. People would probably be more firm if you got to the heart of the matter and stop giving up all this bull jive.
Yeah,
I'm killing you. No, you're not. You're
on tour.
That's right. You're on tour.
You get money on talk shows. You're not a criminal.
Rick Ross used to be a prison guard.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. Y'all need to stop lying. But now, but let's move on because I don't want to get stuck there.
Okay.
Let's go to the second section of the book. This book has 3 sections. We covered the first one. The second one is based upon your blog, which is Rainbows and Lilacs. So kind of talk to us a little bit. We don't want to give all the book away because you really need to get this. Because this is provocative. One thing that you'll know about Gee Joyner, he's going to provoke you to think. You may not always agree, but you're going to think when he gets through. And I want to applaud you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Talk to us about the second section, Rainbows and Lilacs.
It's a blog, and it's really just my musings, my streams of consciousness. We have some guests. It's probably about 22. I'm not sure how many articles. I call them op-ed pieces. They're really essays, shorter essays are included in there, but it's really about things that just spark me and make me write. I don't really have time to be on a blog doing something every single day because I'm writing on my own, of course, and then I'm teaching and I'm lecturing engagement, stuff like that. I'm a father, and I'm not huge on. One of my favorite artists is Prince, right, and Tupac, and they wrote their asses off, but I don't write like that. Like, I'm not that prolific. When it comes to me, I do it, but I don't put myself like I have to keep having so much. So I wanted to start off a blog. I said I was going to do something once a week. Then I was like, maybe I'll do something once a month. But whenever it hits me, I just started writing. Before I knew it, I was like, man, I got a lot. Let me try to put this in the next book. Maybe people like it. It's just social commentary from, we've got scholars, we've got pastors, we've got laymen, we've got professors and other writers in there. I have... and it's just social commentary that's dealing with politics. We have different sections of it. I haven't memorized it, but I know we've got a religious section. We've got the Presidential Trilogy in there. We've got another section in the book about the Trayvon Martin I guess that whole scope of what happened from the beginning to the verdict. We have about 3 of those pieces. But we have Dr. Amrita Chakrabarty Myers from Indiana University. She has a piece in there, and she did the forward for the book, and I appreciate that. Genius, world-renowned, you know. We've got my guy, Amon Campbell, up here at UMass, burgeoning scholar, real genius kid. We've got my brother, Earl Fisher. He's got a piece in there that he does on the Black Church Monkey See, Monkey Do. That's what that's called. We've got a friend of mine, Mustafa Shakur. He's a financier at one of the biggest regional banks down south and in the southeast. He has a piece in there. And so everybody's kind of dealing with different things, socio-political stuff, socioeconomic, race, class, gender. And so I'll hit somebody up, and some people want to say, let me throw this piece in there. And I'll normally have hit people up. It's kind of like, hey, you want to get on this track with me? And they'll do something, and then I'll look over it and post it. And I decide to put the best ones in there. And so we have about, like I said, we have 4 contributors, and we have about 21 different op-ed social commentary essays in there.
Now, let me say this, and I wanna stir, and this is not controversy. I just want you all to know that he hits hard with this book, and I appreciate it. I'm looking at the Presidential Trilogy. He has the Passion of the Negro's Christ, and then when you get to the last part of this trilogy, them ends got shot. The disturbing idolatry of King and Obama. Yeah. So understand, this is going to make you think. This is going to push your boundaries, because when you look at the first piece, it wrestles, and I've read it, it wrestles with, did we elect a president or did we elect a Messiah? Mm-hmm. And you've heard me, those of you who watch this show, you've heard me posit that and say, and he and I have talked, we don't necessarily agree on the presidential piece, but we've talked, and one of the things that's disturbing, I think, to the both of us is we thought we were electing a Messiah. We were electing a panacea for all of the ills that beset black folk, and we were just electing a man to be president. Yeah. And that's the reality. Yeah. But then the next piece is, and you know, that's a quotation really from Chris Rock. Yeah. If you know where that come from. Yeah. You know, when he was talking about Tupac and Biggie. Yeah. That's the reference point.
From Bigger and Blacker.
Yeah. Yeah. And he took the reference point, you know, from popular culture and plugged it into how we have, in essence, become idolatrous when we look at Dr. King and when we look at President Obama, to the point where we almost hold them up as high as Jesus. And now for those of you who are watching me and saying, now you're being blasphemous, no, consider what I'm saying. These were men who have done some extraordinary things, but you can't put them on the level of the Lord, and they all had flaws. Yeah. And then the other question is, what does that mean for us? Do we continue to idolize them and not do for ourselves and not grind and do what we need to do in this hour? So it raises some good points for us.
Yeah. I look at it like, and you know what's so scary about it, even now, I mean, I think it's not looking, you know, we can make excuses for the president, but this is not going to go down in history as a successful 8 years. It's just not. And people can say, well, he had the House working against him, his own Democrats, the Senate. Well, but that's part of being the leader of the free union, right? You've got to figure out a way to work with the House of the Senate. You've got to figure out how to be bipartisan. And I think he tried to do that too much. Reagan is lauded as such a great president, not because he was, but because he did. Who was it? Tip O'Neill at the time. He eventually got his way. Somehow you have to figure it out. And of course, we got to deal with race on this, and maybe this is the reason they're sabotaging it. But
I think it's a large part.
Most part, I think. But we've put these, you know, particularly we put Obama up there with King, and he's no King. And King is no Christ. And that's what I was saying in that piece.
Two different spheres.
Yeah, one person was an activist and one person was a politician.
You can't put the prophet next to the politician. Yeah. And that was part of my critique when it came to what the president said on the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Now, what he said in terms of Trayvon and the George Zimmerman verdict, okay, I'm tracking with you on that, because the president at some point has to speak to that as the leader of the nation. But when it comes to stepping in the shoes of the prophet, I don't think the two shoes are complementary. So that's where I had some issues.
And I think people should just, and he's a man in general. Even the prophet king was a man, right? And whoever does prophetic works, you're a human being. And once we do that and can understand that, we'll be all right. T.D. Jakes has come out this week upset with the pastors of LA, preachers of LA, saying, you know, it's foolishness, this, that, and the other. But I think it's a good look on how we have deified some of these pastors. And they become, not only are they looking literally aesthetically like rock stars, living like moguls, but I think it's shedding good light. Maybe some people will bag up and say, maybe I should. A lot of people are honoring their pastors or their ministers in ways that they don't even honor themselves and their family, and that's wrong.
I think you're right.
So I think it might be good for people to see this. Maybe you can see, sometimes you got to be a voyeur. Step back and look at another situation that's just like yours. And when you step back and look at it, then you're like, ooh, that's how I'm doing? Let me change my ways.
But I think also, now this is me personally, I think that this whole Preachers of LA thing has kind of been overblown from this perspective. When I look at Scripture, Jesus said, on Peter's profession, upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. You have people saying that this is going to be the demise of the church.
Oh, no.
Because of a show.
Because of a reality show.
If a reality show can cause the demise of the church,
wasn't never
we
there.
Don't need the church. See? So I look at this more as this is the latest incarnation of historical things that we've seen that have bridged themselves to the church. Reverend Ike, you can't lose with the stuff I use. You know, Father Divine. That's what I'm looking at this as. This is just another wrinkle. I'm not saying that that's what they're preaching, but I'm saying when you look at the portrayals and how this is coming across, this is just something else that's a distraction. And if you love the Lord and if you have a relationship with the Lord, first of all, 98% of the pastors of America are not like this on their worst day.
Nope, don't have that money.
That's right. And secondly, you need to keep focused on what you're doing and what your church is doing in ministry. And I think that's what, and I'm not applauding him or being in his corner, but I think that's what T.D. Jakes was saying. Because he was saying, look, what I have, I didn't get this way. And what we're asking you for, we're using it this way.
And see, that's what Earl's piece, Reverend Earl Fisher, over at Abyssinian, if you're in Memphis on Mill Branch, my guy, the other part of the pastor of the pastor professor, his piece deals with that monkey see, monkey do. A lot of people are emulating what they think a successful preacher is. Some people go get the car, they go get the Cadillac or the big Benz and know they can't afford it. They got 13 members and they're working a job just so they can look the part because you're monkey see. Some people are copying theology and even the aesthetics of what a successful preacher allegedly is, taking every speaking engagement, running around, being involved in politics when they don't know about it. Now, I definitely believe we need our soul servers, our real ministers, those who have been called our prophetic guys, involved in politics. But if you don't understand politics, you need to go educate yourself first before you get into this arena. But you have people emulating monkey see, monkey do, whether it's the theological content, the way that they're preaching, all the way to the look of it. And so hopefully this reality show won't make people think this is the way, because it looks like more entertainment, and I didn't know that's what ministers were in the game for. I don't care whether you got a Bentley or they got private jets like the dude does or big mansions. Fine and dandy. But I'm just wondering, why would they even do the show?
I wondered that.
But too. I don't want to make it about them.
But
you know.
Yeah, it was an interesting dialogue. I caught a glimpse of it last night. And one of them was sitting down at the table with their brother. And the brother said, you're doing this because you seem to like the accolades that come along with preaching. And he said, that's funny. I thought I was doing it as a work, for the Lord. And my focus was on the things of God. And I'm not caught up in this. I mean, I have all of this, and that's wonderful. But that's not what I'm caught up on. And with this particular pastor, I'm purposely not calling his name. He was a millionaire not because he was a pastor, but because he had another business.
Okay, good.
And he was a millionaire from his 20s. And I think his latest car, he has a Ferrari, he has a what is that? He has a Ferrari, he has a Porsche, and he has a Range Rover. The newest car he has might be 10 years old. The Ferrari and the Porsche are old, and when you see them, you know they're old, because the body style's not even the same what you see. And I'm not, being his advocate, I'm just saying that we spend so much time focused on this that we're missing the major stuff. And like you say, there are too many preachers that think, if I get the sound, if I buy the sermon, if I shape my witness a certain way, if I have the look, then I can perpetrate the ministry. But the ministry is not a look. You don't have to look prosperous to be, called of God. God calls you because God has a work for you to do. But then we getting too much in that.
That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's another show. Now we kind of dealt with the first two parts of the book. Talk to us about section 3, the curious case of the hog head.
That is a story about a man, and the first page will give it away anyway, but a man who kills his wife. He's a murderer. He kills his wife because he doesn't believe those children are his because their hair isn't quote unquote good like his hair. And that's not that. The story starts off like that, so I'm not giving it away. I won't say much more, but it deals with hair grades, infidelity as well, but particularly because these kids don't have hair like he has curly hair and they call it good hair, and the kids' hair is what they call nappy hair or bad hair, and he had been questioning that throughout their marriage and throughout their relationship, and that leads him to believe that she was cheating and untrustworthy and unfaithful to him. But it deals with a lot of nuances because it's narrated from one of the surviving daughters who walked in and sees this murder. And so the daughter is telling her story as a grown woman. She's in high school when this happens. And so the narrator is the daughter, and she's telling her story, and she always was worried about her hair after that. And hair became a big issue to her because of this situation. Not because most people think, I want good hair because I want to look white. No, this is why she has a problem with her hair and straightens it and stuff. And so it deals a lot with that. And it's fiction. I wrap it in fiction. So I think that's the best piece out of that whole. It's a short story, but I think that's the best piece out of the whole thing. And so you probably think Joyner's giving it all away. Nope. I've given you the scope. Now you need to get in there and get it.
In what you said, I hear enough nuances to know that you couldn't have given it away.
No.
That's just the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Because to unpack what that looks like, well, let me put it this way. I've read the book. I'm going to reread the book. And I have the book on Kindle, and I have the book now on the hard copy.
Yeah.
Let me take this time that we have left to let Brother Joyner kind of tell us what he's doing. Talk to us a little bit about the pastor and the professor, and then end with how we can get a copy of this book.
Pastor, Professor, we're on hiatus right now. We're probably doing about 4. We're going to try to get 4 episodes done by the end of the year. It's just busy with Earl's. His membership is growing by leaps and bounds. He's doing his community work, and he's had a lot of speaking engagements too. So we hadn't been able to get on the same page. And we're busy with teaching as well. We're educators too now. So that's first and foremost, I think, in both of our lives, as far as his calling, and then his calling, his ministry, his church, and then of course that and his family as well. So we're all busy, and now that he got a little leeway, then I'm busy. I'm trying to promote the book. I've got an upcoming. I've been on a couple blog talk radio shows. You all can find me on Facebook, Gee Joyner. You'll see what I'm up to. I'm also going to be at a literary conference, Mark Twain conference, down in Atlanta, November the 6th through the 10th. I'll be down there presenting an essay. What else? Oh, and of course, if you get this book, you'll see, of course, Kim, the Story of John, my first literary offering, which is nothing but fiction. So you can find all my books on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and there's numerous other booksellers. I can't remember them all, but those namesakes, of course, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Author House, like the author of a book, AuthorHouse.com. If you're on Facebook, you can get in touch with me. And inbox me. I'll sign it for you, meet you somewhere. I'm selling them at the trunk like I'm a, legal dope. Doing that, and of course, I'm always at LOC South Memphis for life. So I'll be at LOC Mississippi and Walker. I'm there on a regular basis, and so we'll get back to the Passing Professor. We'll probably have our first episode. We know we're gonna have you back. We're gonna have some more scholars back. We're trying to get influential people in Memphis back, and we're trying to do a show with Black entrepreneurs. We have I've got Quinn McGowan. I'm trying to get him on the show. He's an artist. He's having black comics and making black figurines, action figures, and a black comic strip writer. Trying to get him on the show. Of course, the scholars that we know around the city and other entrepreneurs. My guy Daniel Watson, who has has catering business, actually has food on the shelf in Walmart and your Kroger's and stuff like that. So we're trying to get influential people here, young black, 60 and under. What blacks doing to 60 and under? Let's rock and roll. And so the Passing Professor will be doing that. And of course, like I'm saying, just pushing these books, man. This new one, of course, He Talk White, the scholarly and artistic works of a writer. Go get it, hardback, paperback, Kindle, Nook. It's available. Get Kim, the Story of John. And find me on Facebook. I'm pretty much utilizing that free medium right now until they start charging us. So
well, you got to do what you got to do. Yeah. And look, do not despise small beginnings. I remember when Master P was grinding the same way.
Yeah.
Look at what happened
At
to
the
him.
trunk, yeah.
So this is going to blow up. We'll try to have a link also to this on the show's Facebook page. You want to get this book. It's an influential one, and Brother Joyner, we want to thank you for being
Appreciate
here
the work,
today.
man.
God bless.
Appreciate you. God bless you.
All right, we're getting ready to close. Tomorrow we have tentatively scheduled the artivist who will be with us. One of the reasons we've asked him to come is that he has great acumen in investigative journalism, and there are some things and some questions we have to ask concerning all of these killings of these young football players, Kendrick Johnson in particular. How do you stuff newspaper in a dead body and bury it? There's some questions to be asked. We're going to get to that. And so it's time for me to go. And so as I always say, brother man, sister woman, young boy, young girl, put your mind in gear and put your thinking cap on. Peace.